So anyway, no, that Macy's strike, we were over in the warehouse, and you'd have picketing out there, and our job was to stand out between the picket line and the building, and you got to be neutral. You don't side with management, and you don't side with the union people. You have to be neutral. As long as you maintain the neutral status, you're all right. There's no problem. There are problems. Of course, they'll make allegations that if you take actions which you're doing from a neutral standpoint, but it's against the union, they'll say you're siding with management. Likewise, if management feels you're not being strong enough, well, you're siding with the union. See? Mm-hmm. But you try to maintain that posture. That was a pretty good assignment, though, because we had a lot of people over there. I guess the brass anticipated a lot of problems, which never materialized. But God help them if they did materialize. You see, you always got to have sort of an overkill on these things, because you got to anticipate the worst, so that you're prepared in case it does happen. So as a result, you'll have a lot of manpower there, and if nothing happens, you're sort of wasting that manpower. It's just sitting there. And if you only got 20 pickets on the line, you certainly don't put 40 policemen on the line, because that's along comes the news media and they'll take pictures of it, or the union will scream you're not being impartial because you got 40 cops on the line when you have 20 pickets. Say if you have 20 pickets on the line, you may only have 5 policemen out. Mm-hmm. Well, what happens to the other 40 policemen or 35 policemen? You have to do something with them, and what you do is you put them someplace, and they're sitting around waiting. You wait and you wait and you wait, and then everybody takes turns in standing on the line. So it's a pretty good detail as long as nothing happens and as long as everything is peaceful. Mm-hmm. But if all of a sudden you had mass picketing and you had a couple of thousand pickets, then you put your 40 men on the line, and then you might not have enough. You're just going to sweat it out. So we did a lot of picket lines. Now that I was on the picket line. Well, actually, I wasn't on the picket line. I was driving the inspector at the time down in the telephone company Long Lines building down there on West Broadway. It's West Broadway and Erickson Place, I think. And we used to have old Mike Quill, and Mike Quill later became famous as the Transportation Union president. And he got a lot for those transportation workers in the city of New York. Anyway, Mike was down there, and they had all this picket line. It was really mass picketing. Now, mass picketing means thousands of people out on the line. They get everybody to come in, and they'll do it for a couple of hours. See? And they try to block the doorways. And one of the rules of picketing is that you got the street, the sidewalk belongs to the people. It doesn't belong to the long lines, and it doesn't belong to the pickets. And if somebody wants access to that building, there's got to be access to that building, because there's the freedom of walking wherever you want to walk. So you always got to leave a place for people to walk through, and that's where you concentrate your police power, so that you leave that open. But the point of mass picketing is make it so massive that nobody can get into the building. See? So your job is to keep it in line, and of course the more you try to maintain this open space for people to enter, that's when you get into problems with the union. And you stand there, you'll stand on the picket line with your hand behind your back, and you always carry a nightstick on strike duty. And you have the hands behind your back, and you hold the nightstick, and you just stand there. And of course they try to antagonize you a little bit. They're waiting for you to make a mistake, make a move, see, that they will then cause a mob scene or something like that. And one of the tricks they used to do is they used to take little straight pins. And of course, a horse cop is really a wonderful mob control device, see, because people will sort of stay away from the horse. And I've seen them; they really can control real mob scenes. And but what they were doing at that strike is they were taking straight pins and sticking them in the horse's rump, hoping that the horse will rear, and hurt somebody. Well, at least that's what we thought. But then the man had to get his horse out of there and then go through to try to find that pin and get it out of the horse, you know. But they were well-trained horses. Oh, they were beautiful animals. And those fellows that rode them really were able to handle them really beautifully. Those days, of course, Mike Quill and that whole group were considered to be very leftist, you know, communist inspired and all that stuff. So, but they were fighting for what they wanted, and that was some of the means that they were trying to use to get their demands met. Mike Quill sort of was he was with the Transportation Union, and he'd come down and he'd give out a speech. He had a high-pitched voice. A lot of people used to imitate it, you know. And, it was really a squealy voice, almost to a feminine height, you know. And he'd get up there and yell with these mics and with this high-pitched voice. But he was trying to get the people motivated, the strikers motivated, especially on the mass picketing. That's the only time we'd see him, was mass picketing. Then he'd show up, because we'd have all our manpower there and everything. Then they always wind up, they try to do damage, like if they find a telephone car around, they'll walk along and they'll scratch it with their keys or something like that, and it's very difficult for you to see that. And then all of a sudden the cars are all marked up, and then the telephone company's complaining about the pickets are doing this to the cars. Of course, we don't have any evidence, because you have to see them doing it, and you can't. You don't really see them doing it, because they're doing it in such a manner that they're just walking by or something like that. So it's very difficult to get the evidence on that stuff. But we used to have mass picketing. We had mass picketing on the piers. Years later, even when I was a detective, and we had the Longshoremen's Union was thrown out of the AFL, and the AFL tried to reorganize the longshoremen into an AFL Longshoremen Union, see, to break the ILU, which they never did. They eventually gave up. The AFL group were picketing outside of 14th Street and 8th or 9th Avenue or 7th Avenue, one of the buildings over there. That used to be the headquarters for the ILU. And that was a tough one. That was really a tough one. That was after I got transferred to the 14th. That's right, because I went from the 14th, I flew up there. We flew up meaning we were temporarily assigned up there. Where terminology is, we used to say we fly. We fly to the 14th. We fly to Harlem. When we had to do duty in Harlem for special assignments, temporary duty, why we'd go up there for one tour and then come back down to our own precinct. This night was from 11 o'clock at night from midnight until 8 o'clock in the morning. And that was one of the toughest tours I've ever done, was this AFL Longshoremen Union picketing outside of this ILU headquarters. And it was really, we did 8 hours right on the feet, because that mob never left us. And of course, between 11 and 7, there's a noise law in the city of New York. Between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m., they can't make any noise. But the minute 7 a.m., they almost had like a countdown. And as soon as it was 7 a.m., boy, they just opened up everything. They were considered the communist-controlled union. You know, the AFL thing that was trying to organize the old longshoremen were considered the communist-oriented group. And that was really a tough tour, that one. But that was, in those days, that was the thing, mass picketing.